I'm in this women's group and it is amazing and I'm learning so much. The book recommendations are always 10 out of 10. And this each month kind of has a theme, and this one is not necessarily on debate, but basically like really conscious conversations and kind of debate, like being able to hold a conversation with someone with an opposing view, have yourself centered, have your ideas really well thought out, and then a lot of tripwire that everyone can kind of succumb to. So one of the homework assignments was to go over the top 10 logical fallacies when making an argument. And oh my gosh, I loved this exercise so much because I think we'll all find a spot where we're like, ooh, I do that. Ooh, I've done that. Or that is my personal trap. And then there's ones that get used against us all the time. And being able to have a hard definition for it and then see how ridiculous it is if that's constantly thrown at you. For me, it made it a lot easier to take insults and attacks online, because I'm like, this is not a serious person. This isn't someone I should take seriously because they're literally using the number one logical fallacy at me every single time. And that's not someone I should waste any amount of energy on. And neither should you. So in order to protect our sanity online and be able to understand the free, independent, critical thinkers, someone who is putting in the work versus an NPC, here are the top 10 logical fallacies. Number one, I love so much because it is the one that is used against me every second of the day. Just go into the comment section and it'll be right there for you. Ad hominem, attacking the person making the argument rather than addressing the argument itself. You can't trust her opinion. She's a whore. Sound familiar? You can't trust her opinion on climate change because she's not a scientist. It's just like, it's minimizing the person for whatever reason that you justify instead of actually looking at the argument itself. And it's just lazy. It's lazy, and there's no way to argue with someone that's doing that because they have put you in this box, and anything that you say, they're just going to keep trying to shove you into it. So that is not someone to take seriously. Move on. Don't waste your energy on people that aren't awake. Number two, straw man, misrepresenting or exaggerating someone else's argument to make it easier to attack. An example would be opponents of the healthcare bill want to leave sick people to die. So you see that a lot in politics. A really good straw man example, I think it was on the Bill Maher show. It was with Sam Harris and Ben Affleck. Highly recommend. I think that is a prime example of a straw man argument. And it will pop right up if you search for it. Number three, false cause, post hoc ergo prompter hoc. Assuming that because one event followed another, it was caused by the first event. Example, I wore my lucky socks and my team won. Therefore, my lucky socks caused us to win. I think, yeah, that could be like magical thinking as well. Number four is appeal to authority. We saw this everywhere. 2020. It's still available in mass amounts online, but so appeal to authority is asserting that a claim is true because an authority figure believes it to be. The CEO said we should support this initiative, so it must be a good idea. So it's putting, in my opinion, way too much weight on quote credentials and titles, and again, instead of looking at the actual argument, the proposition, the legislation, whatever the idea is. So like look at the idea and not the person that's saying the idea, because I think it's really easy to dismiss someone as not an expert. So now we shouldn't listen to them. And I think that's nonsense, because the experts have been proven to be wrong time and time and time again. And the internet is forever. So I'm sure there are plenty of examples that we can all look up. Number six, false dichotomy, presenting only two options or outcomes when, in reality, there are more. Either we ban all cars or the planet will be destroyed by pollution. Now, this is one that I tend to personally go into because I get very emotional and passionate on certain subjects, and in that I lose clarity. And someone that I look to a lot when they do podcasts is Mark Andreessen. I think he is a master at presenting third options, the third rail. Like, what is something that no one else is seeing that could be a solution to this thing? Or if, for example, you see two bad outcomes, and you're like, well, this shouldn't be okay. He'll present an idea that's like, well, maybe this is actually better than what's going to come in and replace the thing. So I feel like he is a really great example of someone who is always seeing a third perspective. And that's something that I have to consciously work on a lot, because I can get stuck into the trap of this or that, or this false dichotomy. Number 7 is circular reasoning. And this, I get so frustrated when this is used on me, because there's nowhere to go. They leave you nowhere to go. So circular reasoning is restating the argument rather than proving evidence to support it. The Bible is true because it is the word of God. And we know that the word of God, it's the word of God because it says so in the Bible. Or when someone's like, because, and they end a sentence with because, and you'll be like, well, why? Because. And there's nowhere to go. It's just like round and round we go. And that's really frustrating. So I think when you see that as well, it's just to exit the conversation, because that person they're not interested in engaging in like a really honest way or a nuanced way. Number 8 is appeal to emotion, manipulating emotions to win an argument rather than using logic or evidence. If we don't pass this law, think of all the children who will suffer. Does that sound familiar? Even that example. Number 9, red herring. Introduce irrelevant information to divert attention away from the main issue. Yes, I know I was caught cheating on the test, but look how hard I've been studying lately. And you're like, wait, that's not what we're talking about. 10, hasty generalization. Again, I love this one. Drawing a conclusion based on a small or unrepresentative sample. I met 2 rude people from that country, so everyone from that country must be rude. And I think that as tribal creatures, this is probably very easy for a lot of us to go into if we're not consciously present. And it's to create pejoratives around things, to put people into buckets, because it's much easier if I can have this kind of simplified version of who you are and what you must be like, rather than take the time and energy to experience you or your idea as an individual or as something new, and remaining open to it, but also still critical, right? So you can be open to something and still assess it. But I think once you close yourself off, it's like you're not able to see anything honestly. Like you're seeing it through kind of distorted glass. Next, we had the Esther Perel talk. Now, I love her content online. I think that she approaches relationships in a very nuanced and modern way. And maybe modern's the wrong word, but it feels modern. It feels updated and less this switched it. There's also one of the main logical fallacies, and this kind of ties back into it, and it's the appeal to tradition. And it's the idea that because we have always done something one way, that's the best way to do it and the way that we have to continue to do it. And what I've learned from reading books that I thought I would hate, like I've gotten some of these books, I'm like, oh, this is going to be way too like left-leaning or way too feminist or whatever the thing is. And then I'm like, no, don't make assumptions. Just read the book. You got it for a reason, and have it sharpen your own ideas, if anything, if you don't agree with it. And what I've learned in reading like both sides of, I guess, the feminist movement, I just lost my train of thought. Oh my gosh. Is that the idea of tradition is kind of bogus in a sense. What we think has always been the way has always been this constant evolution with society and the world around us. So even though we'll talk about the nuclear family, or we'll talk about women working, women have always worked. We just used to work the farms, and we used to work with our whole family, including our husbands. So tradition is really just like a quick snapshot of where humans were in that time. And I think it's important to carry on what works for us, what has value, and then also not be scared of progress or change, right? Upward momentum. I don't think that's a bad thing either. So I think you have the balance of conservation, conservatism, and progressivism. And these two things kind of check each other constantly. And I think different passages of time require different levels of assertion, we'll say. So sometimes maybe you need to be hitting the brake and sometimes you need to be hitting the gas. And I think it's not being personally identified with either or. It's just recognizing what the moment calls for. And then also what's authentic for you.